comment may also be allowed on individual items during the course of the meeting as invited by the chair. And finally, all board meetings shall be recorded, including public comment periods. So I'd like to entertain a motion to amend the agenda. We've got there was an email that sent out to the board. It was the name of the
East Coast Drilling and Blasting Company.
East Coast Drilling and Blasting Company has applied for a renewal of their permit, and so I'd like to add that to the agenda during under the facility permit renewal section. I'd entertain a motion to add that.
Make a motion.
Motion by Gary, second by Carl. Any discussion about that? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding that to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's a change. And then finally, under the director's report, we've got a fire code update we'd like to add to Ashley's report. Probably could have done that in 2 motions, but I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to add that to the agenda as well.
Motion.
Motion by Gary,
Second.
second by Carl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we've got an amended agenda.
Amy is on her way.
The second agenda item is an introduction of our new staff attorney that's going to work with us, Amy Broughton. She's on her way, so we'll go ahead and push that down the agenda and introduce her when she gets here. Okay, and we've already done the adjustment and approval of agenda, so without any delay, we'll go on with our special presentation. We do these Clean Air Excellence Awards every year, and this is a permitting agency, so it's always nice to be able to reward some folks that have gone above and beyond, and that's certainly the case with the Dynamite Roasting Company. You guys come on up. I had some Dynamite Roasting coffee this morning, so I'm feeling nice and peppy. But these guys, we've got Andy Gibbon and we've got Patrick Shaw. And so these folks are very well deserving. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and Evan, who are going to talk about the specifics of the award program, and then we'll make the presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Joel. So we've been doing these Clean Air Excellence Awards since 2004. And they go to companies that are going above and beyond all the air quality requirements to implement innovative measures that typically save money and reduce air pollution at the same time. So this year we're really excited to have Dynamite Roasting Company here with us. They were nominated by our Clean Air Campaign partners, and I think Sarah from Land of Sky is going to try to be here later. But what they've done with their roasting company in Black Mountain and their coffee shop is they've installed solar systems on both locations. They have a Sprinter van, 2022, the first electric delivery van that was purchased for use in Western North Carolina, where they're delivering to their customers. It's got a 140-mile range. They're also all organic, fair trade. They have a recycling program for their coffee bags even. And so we've calculated some emissions reductions with help from some of the EPA tools, where we're now recognizing some of these exciting renewable energy and electric vehicle projects. And we're estimating that they're offsetting about 102,000 pounds of greenhouse gases, or CO2, and also 50 pounds of NOx and 10 pounds of SO2 and PM as well. So we're really excited to have them here today. And I'm going to turn it over to Evan. He's going to do the actual presentation of the Clean Air Excellence Award.
Great. So the Clean Air Advisory Committee and the agency would like to present you with this award for your environmental stewardship and commitment to keeping our airs clean. So,
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it.
Amy, if you want to come on up, we've got a spot for you.
Okay, well, let Amy get settled in and then we'll introduce her in a second. Okay, our consent agenda item today is just the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on May 11th. You've had a chance to review those. I entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve is written.
Second.
I'm gonna give it to Ned. Moved by Carl, second by Ned. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Unfinished business. We've been talking about Engage Buncombe, the website for all the boards for a while, and Ashley, you want to give an update on that?
Okay, sure. Angelica Tyler is here in the back, and she is live streaming. This is our first live stream meeting. This is the Engage Buncombe site that James has up on the screen that Angelica made for us. And you will notice that it's got the meeting dates. There are files, so all of the board packet documents are actually uploaded there as well. We also send them to the board members, and they're on the SharePoint site, but all of the files are there. And people can go back and watch the video later if they're not able to see the streaming, the live streaming. So this is what we started out with, just something basic like we talked about with the board meeting information. If you go to our board meeting page on our main website, which is not meant to replace, but the older agendas and minutes are there, and the newer items are going to be here on Engage. And there is a link right on that page so that you can find this. And we can add content to it, but right now we're just starting with the basics.
So are we ahead or behind all the other departments and parts of the county? Would you say? All right, very cool.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, well, let's slide up to the second agenda item, the introduction of staff attorney Amy Broughton.
Hi.
Hi, Amy. Amy's going to be our legal support for the board going forward. And Amy, you got some big shoes to fill. Mike Free was good.
I've heard from a lot of people. So, well, thank you for having me, and I will rely on him as necessary to do good work for you.
Perfect. Well, welcome.
And we will get a proper name plate for you for next
Yeah,
time. I apologize for
I don't
that.
think anybody's confused. So I think we're all right.
We figured you would know where to go if we had that up.
Not Michael.
Not today.
Okay, headed to the director's report now. We've got a short one today, and Ashley's got several things to update us on.
Okay, thanks, Joel. The first item is just an update on our EPA 103 and 105 grants. These grants, we had the amounts for next year approved by the board in the budget that you guys voted on in May. But unfortunately, we've been getting some different information from EPA, and it turns out we found out that those numbers were off, but the good news is they were a little low. We actually got more in our 105 and 103 grants. It was about an additional $60,000 in the 105 grant and an additional $24,000 or so in the 103 grant. So the budget did not account for that. So we were projecting a fund balance draw of over $100,000, but it will be quite a bit less for this additional $85,000 or so that we are going to have in revenue. So just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. Not looking to do a budget amendment for the increase in revenue right now, but just wanted to keep you appraised of that. So we're hopeful that, typically with these EPA grants, typically once we get an increase, we stay at that level for a while. So we're hoping that this will be the amount that we'll be seeing in the future and that it won't go down. But we're not 100% sure. So
Always good to get more revenue from that.
And I think the other item, we add the fire code ordinance updates. So just wanted to touch on that really quick. Appreciate you guys letting me add that at the last minute. You might have seen something in the news about it. It's been talked about quite a bit. The county commissioners are going to vote on this tomorrow at their meeting. And just wanted the board to know that our Air Quality Advisory Committee did review these fire code ordinance changes back in, I think it was April timeframe. And we were able to look at those and ask questions and comment. The two biggest changes, really, it's been a little bit confusing the way it was reported. And I don't know if anybody has seen the coverage, but really a lot of things are just being updated and there's not a lot of changes. There's a couple exceptions. One is that the fire marshal will now be able to require that fires be attended, which is significant for us at air quality and also the fire departments when we go out on these burning complaints. There's never been a requirement that someone has to stay with the fire and attend it. And so that is being added, that's proposed for being added, and also extinguishment authority. That is also something that's not covered in air quality rules or the fire code rules that's under the fire marshal. Now they will be able to require a fire be extinguished. We typically ask people, hey, could you please put the fire out? And they normally will. But having that authority, the fire marshal will be able to designate the fire chief in that area, and they will be able to require that a fire be put out. So those are two things that we're very supportive of and glad to see. And so I just wanted everybody to know that that's out there, and in case anybody had any questions.
The extinguishing of the fire, is that only a case of when it's in violation, or would that be any case that they could say, well, we want to extinguish it meets our code?
More so violation, Carl. It's, I mean, typically, yeah, violation. I can't think of an instance where, you know, everything was legal and there was no issue where they would need to force someone to extinguish it.
Well, I didn't know if a nearby neighbor or someone called just complaining about the fire. They go out and say, well, you know, they're complaining about it, even though you can burn it, put it out.
No, it probably wouldn't happen in that instance, honestly.
But if it was unattended, then that sometimes happens, then maybe they would, if it's unattended, then I think the fire marshal would.
Yeah, I
Definitely
would
support
guess
that.
if they felt like something was, you know, in danger, they could.
Was there some trigger for this?
Yeah, well, I mean, we work pretty closely with, you know, a lot of the fire departments. The unattended's that's been a, you know, contentious for a long time. What happens is, at one point we used to issue permits for land clearing, large operation like machine pile brush. When we issued those permits, we had some language in that permit that required it to be attended. But they took, you know, the state changed that, took that authority away from us to issue those permits. So the rules don't actually allow us to, you know, require it to be attended. So that went away when our ability to issue permits went away. And what happens is, I mean, like where they're clearing 50 acres to make a subdivision, and these, you know, piles as big as this building, they'll light them on fire, and they can't, you know, they can't add to them after 6 p.m., but they sit and smolder and they leave them unattended. So if you know, the weather conditions and the fire gets out or something, the fire departments respond. And I mean, in that big situation, you need equipment. I mean, the fire trucks aren't capable of extinguishing them, and there's nobody on site to, you know, handle the equipment, and we don't have a permit, so we don't have a contact person. So, you know, we can't even get in touch with anybody. So.
Okay.
So it did come up last year. We went to one of the fire chiefs. They have meetings and they let us come to the meeting, and we did an outreach presentation with them, and this whole conversation came up, and we explained that, you know, we can't require anybody to attend fires because we don't issue permits anymore. And they became pretty concerned about it after that meeting, and I think that did result in some of this conversation. And in addition to that, the state fire code has been updated several times, so the fire marshal's office was already on their radar that they had to make certain updates. And so they were able to include this as part of it. So, thanks for asking. Okay, so now we're at the monitoring update, and I'll have Kevin give that as well.
Sure.
Please.
As far as data completeness for the year with 2.5, we're 96.3%. Ozone, we're 95.5%. We're still continued to be impacted by the Canadian wildfires. Since the last board meeting in May, I went back and counted up. We've had 22 yellow days, and those have primarily been due to the wildfires. We haven't experienced an exceedance yet, but we've come as close as you can come without having an exceedance on 2 days. The standard's 35 micrograms for 24 hours. 2 days we were at 34.4 and 34.2. So we've barely dodged an exceedance. During the week of July the 17th, we installed our new PM monitor. It's a Teledyne T640X. We got that installed and got it operating. And it will measure PM 2.5, PM10, and what they call PM force, the difference between the 10 and the 2.5. And if you guys remember, we're going to be required, we're not required yet, but we'll be required once we're projected to go over 500,000 in population. Once we reach that, we'll be required to run a PM10 monitor. And we actually got some money from the EPA to go ahead and purchase that monitor. And actually, I had some help setting it up, had enough money in the grant to have somebody come in and help us set it up and get everything operating. So that's up and going. So, and then I was just going to mention next week, we're going to be participating with the state and the State Division of Air Quality for the technical systems audit that the EPA comes around and performs every 3 years. We weren't due for ours until next year, but what they've decided to do is go ahead and group our agency with the state, and we'll be on the same schedule as them going forward. So bad news is it's next week. The good news is they won't be here next year. So
Question.
sure.
I have a question. Where does pollen fit in with the 2.5 or air quality? Because I noticed on some weather sites online, they have separate maps for pollen and air quality.
Yeah, it is separated. I don't know. Ashley may want to speak to that. I know I'm probably not as familiar as her as far as what's on our website for the pollen.
I'm not sure. I know that Forsyth County, that local air quality program, they do pollen monitoring, but we do not. So I guess what you're saying is with the PM10 monitor, would that maybe pick up some of the pollen? I know that.
Probably the 2.5, I'm not sure.
Okay. I believe it's separate, and so we don't have a way to quantify it.
Well, I think the Asheville Allergy Associates, whoever it is in town, they do monitor pollen and report it to someone in the state because they are a monitoring site for the pollen maps.
Yes, and we do have a link to that on our website under Asheville Air Quality. There's a section for pollen where we have added their link to their site because we do get that question a lot. So I guess the answer is, we don't have a way to quantify it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't separate it out, Ned.
It's pretty big, relatively speaking, so it would get filtered out before it went into the fine particulate monitor. Probably also would get filtered out before going into the PM10.
Yeah, I didn't know how big pollen is.
I don't know. Keith?
So the state has some specific pollen monitors also as well for some of the data. one that we didn't verify. So we have a separate one focused just on.
You know where they are?
Did they do forecasts, too, Keith?
So they don't, they provide the information. I can look into the forecast. I can use that to do, that. Environment urologist.
Gotcha.
And as far as the one other note on the Canadian wildfires, we've had a lot of questions from residents, and the CAPE team, communications and public engagement team that Angelica is with, has put together a toolkit for us for Code Orange days, since we've been seeing a lot of these predicted or forecast Code Orange days with these Canadian wildfires, and it looks like they're going to burn all summer long. They've also put together a toolkit for Code Red, and so they're pushing out some messages for us on our website whenever these events are coming up. And we do have a new banner on our website. I think we may have mentioned this last time. When we are forecasted Code Orange, that means no burning allowed. So that has been helpful to have it on the website in addition to our phone line where people call to see if it's legal to burn. And we've also had some questions about the KN95 masks, since we had a lot of those with COVID. And we actually, Kate put together a meeting with us and Ellis, the public health director, medical director, and emergency services, and Chris from safety. And we discussed our messaging and just being prepared in general for these events, and went over some EPA documents and what their stance is on N95 masks. And apparently the KN95 were never really meant to be distributed in the United States. And so now that the public health emergency is over, we won't be giving any of those out. And EPA has some information on the website about N95 masks and if you should wear one if you're outside for an extended period of time, and considering your conditions and discussing with your doctor. In general, we don't recommend that. Recommend going inside and avoiding bad air if it is Code Orange or red. But they do have some good information out there that we're all on the same page about that. So that was really helpful too. And I'll have to ask Kevin Tipton. I think he did mention that he had a contact there at DOT, but I'm not sure if he did. I know that what he's planning to do after the commissioners take up the ordinance changes tomorrow at their meeting is there's going to be a public outreach campaign to let everybody know about the updated ordinance. And so I'll be sure to bring that up and mention that to him to see if. Oh yeah, that would be good. Do you know, if Keith, if I don't guess DAQ does that with DOT much? The
So
signs.
we had a discussion of these. 2006, 2007, and at that time, the technology was not yet. They had just certain sorted messages, where they could put on those signs. And there was also, in general, all the safety. But that's really.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have on that.
So we've got 4 small facility permits to consider.
Including the East Coast.
Yeah, that's right. Make that 5 with the East Coast.
Coast Drilling.
East Coast Drilling.
So I would just note that on the East Coast Drilling, that's a portable rock crusher. And sometimes they choose to keep these permits. They're not based in Buncombe County, but they want to come into Buncombe County to work. And so that's why we took it off the agenda. We had not heard from them and we were not able to reach them. So It looked like they did not want to keep that permit, but of course, they did get in touch with us at the 11th hour. And so appreciate the board considering putting that one back on there so that they can keep their permit active.
You want to take these one at a time or?
Well, I was gonna ask if you would entertain a motion that would include all 5 since they're renewals and they're really just updating the general conditions.
I would entertain that. Call.
Then I would make a motion to approve the facility permit renewals for the City of Asheville Water Resource Department North Fork Water Treatment Plant, Cremation Services of Western North Carolina LLC, Southern Concrete Materials Biltmore Plant, Southern Concrete Materials Weaverville Plant, and East Coast Drilling and Blasting.
Sorry to make you say all that. I have a couple of questions about the permits.
We can have a discussion.
Yeah.
Let's get a second and then we'll open it up for discussion.
second.
Second by Gary. All right, Evan.
So, and Alex, yeah, you're here. Alex. So on the crematorium, one of the burners wasn't working. And you wrote that they were going to try and get a technician to come out. So if some of their equipment isn't working, how can it pass inspection if you can't inspect it?
So they actually have a secondary location, which is really the primary for all of the operations. They only use the one there for rare instances when they get over and other things to be done. So at the moment, it's not something where both of them are in demand and they have to use both. So one is more than demand for locations. So that's really it, since it's so infrequently used. Now, if there was an issue with the one on Silver Park Highway, that might be the bigger concern. But with this one being so frequently used, or infrequently used, I don't have a problem with them taking time to fix it, especially when they're not using it while they're not fixed.
Okay, great.
Will they have to get the permit renewed for the one that's not working when they do need it? Will that come back and be a permit renewal or not?
No, that the permits get renewed every 8 years. And so if we go ahead and renew it now, then we'll, we need to follow up with them and make sure that they get it fixed. But it sounds like they just want to keep the permit active.
Okay,
Otherwise, they have to apply all
can
over
we
again.
just permit the facility that is working and not the other one?
Yeah, this
You
would
mean
just,
renew?
Two different permits.
Oh, so you got two
It's two
permits.
locations.
This is just the one that's in compliance at the moment.
yes.
Okay. Does that make sense?
I have the same question for the East Coast, which is not operating now. We want to permit something that's not operating, just so maybe they can come back in the future.
And there's no inspection report because they haven't been
Yeah.
operating.
Right. Well, the permits are good for 8 years. And so the advantage to them is they pay an annual permit fee, and then they have to send us an annual report that tells us how much material they crushed in Buncombe County. And if we don't renew the permit, then they would have to reapply and submit a new application and submit a new application fee. And so we have a lot of these portable crushers that just keep the permits going. They are required to notify us when they do come back to Buncombe County.
Yeah, but that was another thing. They knew their permit was expiring. This is the East Coast one. They didn't get in touch with you. They haven't done their part of the thing, so I can't see permitting them again, especially since they're not operating.
And how would we, if they all of a sudden decided to start operating again without an inspection, how would we know that their equipment working as it should? Do they get annual inspections, or are they inspections just before their permit is up for renewal?
Typically, if it's a small facility, it would be every couple of years or so, but they are required to notify us when they come to Buncombe County, just so that we can inspect them. And so, the rules are just set up that they can ask for renewal, which they did, but it was late. So that's kind of how it works. But because of zoning or planning requirements, our rules do require that they notify us and let them notify the local zoning authority for wherever that location is. So we get that notification, and then we make an effort to inspect them when we find out that they're.
Yeah, but they didn't even bother to notify you to renew the permit.
We did get it late, that's true.
You got it late after you asked for it.
Right. You know,
So,
they had some staff changes, but they wanted to keep the permit,
Well,
so,
you know,
um,
that's tough.
So back to the crematory services. So they have two separate permits, one permit for each location, and the renewal is just for the one.
Okay.
That is not currently operating. So on highway, the other location is where 99% of all the operations are.
Okay. Is there a way that we can provisionally renew the permit and then once their equipment is working again, re-inspect that? Or because they don't use it, you would go out and you would see a dormant facility?
But, I mean, really, they only keep someone really the event that they do need that extra capacity, but it's not very long. That's primarily the actual, whatever, takes place, and then everything, like, I don't want to be too clear, but I don't think any food involvement takes place in that section. It's all done by there, but they have the capacity to perform cremations there, but it's primarily. I think this year we're only did 6 in that 3-month period. We did doing a lot more than 6 in 3 months. And a lot of these have conditional limits of like 1,500 cremations and everything.
But Alex, you're saying that one's under a separate permit anyway? Yeah.
And we can go in to any location and inspect unannounced anytime we want. So it's not a case of
correct.
renewing this permit prevents us from finding a violation a month from now or whatever. I can understand the East Coast wanting to keep a permit because I think I remember something zoning related that in order to get the zoning, you have to have the permit, but you can't have the permit unless you get the zoning. And most of their work, I think, is coming in when they're doing construction projects and recycling that concrete and that type of stuff, crushing it for reuse. And so,
Correct, so it's
I
pretty
think it's-
infrequent.
and I think it's one of those things that, which do you get first? And they count.
It is, and we require permits for the crematories and the rock crushers, and State Division of Air Quality does not require permits for the rock crushers anymore. And they don't permit a lot of the crematoriums anymore also. But, we do have issues with them sometimes, so we like to keep them permitted, and as long as they're in good standing with their permit and we can go out and inspect them, then we're going to recommend renewal.
Did you say the state no longer requires permits for the rock crushers?
They do not. They are still subject to federal new source performance standards. And so if they get a complaint, if they handle it on a complaint-driven basis, they have to test their equipment and they have to meet certain opacity standards. And so we prefer, they used to all have permits, but the way it is now with the state permitting less sources, they have to have a permit when they go into Mecklenburg County and Buncombe County because of our local programs. So they typically keep permits in Mecklenburg and Buncombe, so that because they move these rock crushers around the state quite a bit. So
There's only 2 places they need a permit to even run them.
yes, but they are still subject to the rules. And so
Yeah.
if the state Division of Air Quality gets a complaint and goes out and they're not complying, we just find the permit is a good compliance tool because that way, we can have everything spelled out, and we can also put additional conditions in the permit that requires them to maintain their equipment in accordance with manufacturer's recommendations and things like that. So
Okay, Ashley, what you're saying is that the state does not supersede our local requirements. In other words, we don't have to abide by the state rules, which don't require permits. Maybe Keith can,
Well,
Speak to
no,
that.
I don't think that that's correct. We're allowed to be more strict than the state. So if you consider having a permit to be more strict,
Yeah.
you know, that's something where when the rules changed, we recommended to the board that we wanted to continue to permit them. And the board opted to not adopt that change because
so
we
we're
felt
not
like
in
it was
conflict.
more strict.
we're not in conflict with any state rules.
I don't know.
And you said they had to notify you before they plan on operating in the county?
Yes, and that's because the air quality regulations require a zoning consistency determination, like Carl was referencing. And so if they didn't have a permit, they would not have that requirement. But since they hold a permit, we are required to make sure that they notify the local zoning authority. And so that's written into their permit. And that also, there's another condition in the permit that allows them to operate at multiple sites. And that requires that they notify us when they move from one site to the other, because we have some local ones that actually operate at some of the rock quarries. And if the rock quarry wants to move from one site to another, they also notify us. So that helps us so that we can get out and inspect them. Otherwise, we wouldn't know unless we got a complaint if there was a lot of dust from one of their operations. So
And how much notice do they have to be?
10 days. Is that right, Betsy? 10 days? 10 or 15?
But enough time for you
But
to,
enough time for when we get the notification, I can set up a day, and usually they'll give us a time frame, like you working from this date to this anticipated end date. We kind of have a little bit of time in there. But yeah, it's one of those things that now, the last time that happened, was crushing. As soon as we got the notification, they hadn't been affected in several years. I put them on for, I think, like the second day of the operation. I'm out there every morning.
and if they came in the next couple of months, do you have room in your schedule to do an inspection?
Yeah, absolutely. The most difficult thing with those is really catching them when they're operating. So if I go out there even one day and somebody's working or they're finishing up for the day, I can say, hey, then you start normally and then come back another day.
Okay.
So that's
And one issue we've had with these is they typically get jobs on pretty short notice. And when we issue permits every other board meeting, it's a couple of months. And so we end up having them ask for an expedited permit because they have a big job and they want to start in 3 weeks. And so we have tried to sort of accommodate the nature of that business so that we can get them permitted and make sure that we're inspecting them. We have had complaints over the years a lot where they don't use enough water on the rock that they're crushing. And so we feel that having them permitted really helps keep them in compliance.
Okay, any further discussion? I'm thinking it might be better if we rescinded the motion and took these one at a time, just because there's been enough conversation about each one. I don't want to.
I've got one other question for Alex. How do you determine opacity? So in one of your inspections, you said, I think there was like diesel trucks starting up and you estimated a brief burst of like opacity around 10%.
So I mean, I'll sit there and we'll stare at the emissions. We'll do everything from capacity reading, the standard 6-minute capacity reading. Other times facilities will have units that they monitor the capacity themselves. And you need to get a more exact measurement. But then we go every 6 months to certify and recertify for reading visibility.
If there are more questions for Alex, would you begin with five? He is not
I'm out.
Okay,
Thank you, Alex.
would the board is the board comfortable with voting on the motion on the floor, or do we want to separate these out?
I'm comfortable.
Ned?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, all right. So the motion by Carl, I think second by Gary, was to approve these facility permit renewals. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. So Ashley had talked to me about the need to explore these investigative fees that we have. There needs to be potential updates to that. So I'm going to let her explain that. And if we need to take action on it, we will.
Okay, thanks, Joel. This is for when we issue civil penalties. We do not keep our civil penalty funds. Those all go to the school board per the North Carolina Constitution. But we are allowed to charge reasonable investigative fees. And so Betsy has put together this update to the investigative fee policy for you guys to consider. And it's basically, we've been doing this the same way for several years. It's based on staff salaries and benefits combined and an average of all agency staff. So she's highlighted in yellow here what's changing, and what the fee, the hourly rate that we're currently charging is $39 an hour. And we typically have at least 3 hours in the time that we bill. So we typically get an extra $117 for each violation we issue that we get to keep, and the civil penalty itself goes to the school board. So it's been since 2009 since we've updated this. So our current salary and benefit average all added up is $69 an hour now, which would mean if we charge 3 hours, it would be $207 instead of $117 that we would get to keep. We're also proposing to add, we've got some language on here for after hours where we do the time and a half. That's pretty rare. We're not going out on many after hours complaints now, so I don't think we typically don't use that, but it's here in case we want to use it. And we're also adding here something we haven't had before, which is the mileage reimbursement. We've seen where the Division of Air Quality is charging for their mileage, and that's something that we have good data on. It seems reasonable. We definitely don't want the investigative fee to be higher than the civil penalty, so we have to keep that in mind. But we're asking to update this with these rates, and this is something that the board typically votes on.
Question. If a violation is discovered during a routine inspection, do you implement this as well?
Yes, typically, because anytime we issue a civil penalty, we have something called the enforcement work group, where we have the director, either the permit program manager or the field services supervisor and the staff person. We all review. Somebody has to write up the violation, calculate the penalty. We have it go out to the committee to look at it and see if anybody has an issue and wants to pull it for discussion. So yes, we do use this if we find it on a routine investigation.
Yeah, 2 points. Number one, on your mileage charge, where it says current federal rate for the year, there are occasions when the federal rate does change during the year. So you might want to say current federal rate at time of inspection. Mm-hmm. And the other point, since this policy will be in effect longer than 1 year, we need to include some sort of inflation clause in there.
That's a good point.
Well, as it written, it says the rate will be adjusted each year as salaries increase. And that's really what you're basing this off of.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that we would want to state is at what time will it be adjusted?
And that can apply to all kinds of fees that we charge, really. I mean, I think this board's never, it seems like we're always updating something that, we last visited 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe we ought to get, not for this meeting, obviously, but get more consistent with, how these rates do go up and when they go.
Based on what Carl just said, that statement where it's adjusted as salaries increase, I would add salaries and benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And what we did last, in 2021, when we updated our fees for our permitted facilities, we did put an inflation clause in there for the Title V's only. But the way that rule was updated when the board voted for it was that we would adjust it January, is it January 1st, Betsy, of every year? And then what we do is Betsy runs the numbers, we put them on the website so the permitted facilities know come January 1st, the updated rates will be on there when they pay their fees. So maybe we could do something like that here where every year in January, I don't know, what do you think of?
Well, we did our, if we're gonna get a CPI increase, July 1st. So that might be the way we would have those numbers. We would probably know those numbers. Well, I don't know, they actually approve it. But we should still have that.
Yeah, just as long as we have some way to increase the fees as needed with inflation.
And we might not even have to vote on it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but if we automatically do it every year and
Yeah.
and the policy is approved, or again, we might just want to revisit it every year too.
Well, if the policies, if this language stays the same, we don't need to we'd only need to revote on it if we wanted to revoke or change the annual adjustment. So this is only applied when a civil penalty is levied, right? So if I don't like my neighbor, I can't just call you out there. Okay.
And so this does apply open burning. So this comes into play with open burning and then with facilities or dust, whether it's asbestos removal, demolition permits, pretty much all of the
Rock
different-
crushing.
Yes, rock crushing.
So under the under the violations discovered during regular business hours, right before the hourly rate, all violations will include at least 1 hour of administrative time. Is that included in the minimum 3-hour charge, or is that additional to the 3-hour charge?
It's included.
Okay. And then my last comment is the second page, the suggested language for assessing the fees still refers to the agency as WNCRAQA.
Okay, thanks for catching that. Can that fake that?
The past dies hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So before we make a motion, I just want to be clear on what we're voting on. We're increasing the charge during business hours and outside business hours.
Mhm.
So we're going up to 207 and 312.
Yes.
Or is
And
it-
adding the mileage.
And do we want to add for Ned's suggestion, a CPI, an annual adjustment, or just vote on?
I don't think you wanted to get to do that.
No, I think it's sufficient if we just specify when that adjustment will take place.
Okay.
So if it's
That's
July
fair.
1st, the rate shall be adjusted July 1st each year as salaries and benefits.
And benefits.
Okay, so add language. Do you want us to bring this back at the next meeting or just go
Well, I
ahead
think we
and
can kind of amend
adopt?
it here.
Yeah, okay. That's
If somebody
that's
wants to
simple.
try to verbalize the motion, probably Evan or Ned.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the written policy with amendments of changing the current federal mileage rate for the year to federal mileage rate at time of inspection. And
That's easier now.
And in paragraph
2.
where it says, the rate shall be adjusted each year as salaries and benefits increase. And did we say that we want to change things from to July 1st as the date when?
Yes.
Okay.
You got that, Betsy?
I do.
Okay.
I think that's it, unless Evan, there's something else.
Right.
Oh, and also page 2, change WNC
Well, that's just in the memo though. I mean, that's not necessarily-
RAQA.
Right.
Second.
Second by Carl. Any further discussion on the updating these investigative fees? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right. Legal counsel report. Amy brought,
I have nothing to report.
yeah, that's the way we like it.
We're all legal.
Yes.
Advisory committee report, Evan.
Okay, so when we met, when was this, June, we discussed the Clean Air Excellence Awards. Ashley gave us the updated information from Dynamite Roasting. We heard more about the fire code ordinance update, which Ashley's already filled us in on. I gave an update on a couple of projects that I have going on. One of them was the Purple Air Sensor project. I had 15, these are low cost PM 2.5 sensors. Had 15 of them set up on the roof of a UNCA building to calibrate and test. I haven't gotten a student to look at the data yet, but that's moving forward. We're planning on putting these sensors in various neighborhoods in Asheville. There's another project where I'm building sensors out of Raspberry Pi and other low-cost particulate matter sensors. I met with Asheville City Schools. We're going to put one at each school campus, and I walked campuses with someone from their health and safety department. Picked out the monitoring locations. That'll start in the fall. We also have a UNCA student working with me and the agency, with Ashley and Betsy, on a Energy Star treasure hunt at the craft breweries around Asheville. So she's been going into some breweries and essentially doing an energy audit with them. So that's been a lot of fun. She's going to compile the results this fall. She's still doing site visits. And Ashley gave us, like she always does, agency updates and some promising leads on some grants coming from the US EPA from the Inflation Reduction Act. And our next meeting is August. We're going to meet in person for the first time, just Asheville.
Any questions for Evan?
We have 2 of our committee members here, Jay Haney and Keith Bamber.
Welcome, guys. Yeah, thanks for your work. I got a question about the Air Excellence Awards. I know we give them out every year, and they usually have a Dynamite Roasting was a very worthy recipient, I think, this year. But how do we promote it more? How do we get more people interested in possibly applying? And do we do any promotion at all? I mean, I know staff's too busy to get out there and hustle that, but I'm just curious about that aspect of it.
Yeah, we've been putting out notices on our website. We do send letters out to all 70 of our permitted industrial facilities every year, and we really started it with them in mind. But in addition to just sending out the letters, trying to expand it to the community, we do have the county does help put out a notice on our website and on the county's website, and we typically send out a press release, and sometimes Mountain Express or somebody will pick it up. But really, we could do a better job of promoting it. And now maybe that we have the Engage Buncombe website, maybe there's probably some opportunities. But I think that's something that we have struggled with, and maybe that's something that the committee can help with more. I don't know. Definitely open for suggestions. Anybody has any? Sybil looks like she has one.
All right, food for thought. Okay, we're down to the short rows now. Calendar, our next meeting, and this was adjusted again. We've been kind of moving back and forth, but in terms of board availability, we're looking at September 28th is our next board meeting. Everybody okay with that? Okay, 4 o'clock here. Okay, well, down to the announcements. Any board members have any additional thoughts for the good of the board here? Hearing none, we're down to public comment, and I'm guessing that there's nobody signed up, but
No.
okay. We're a pretty boring group here, but that's okay. All right,
Move to adjourn?
move to adjourn. Carl,
Second.
second by Evan. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.
All right, please
Well,
take,
actually, finish
please
it
eat some